One of the reasons I have this channel, yes, it's an outlet for me. I love talking about movies, but also sometimes I just need a reason to justify why I went and saw something, and this is just one of those movies. Imaginary just came out, and it is a new Blumhouse horror movie, and it is about the premise of basically an imaginary friend. This little girl is coping with something that happened to her in her life that's kind of traumatic, and she starts talking to this imaginary friend, and while dealing with that, she has a stepmom who's trying to really connect with the new family and really get to know these kids and try to connect with them and help them out through these times. Even though it's kind of estranged, it's kind of hard to do that because the kids are kind of reluctant on it, but they do kind of like her. And also you have a dad in this movie who's part of the family, who's part of a band. And none of these characters never really fully meshed together to make one cohesive movie that fits the premise of what's going on. Imaginary friends that cause a haunting, that's not a new thing in horror, but you can still always do something kind of fun with it. You can play with it a bit. It's just that this movie, it feels like it never wants to actually go full send it on the insanity of the premise, because this movie takes itself so seriously, which I think could work if we had characters that we really cared about, and that really brings us to the characters. None of them feel like they're rather explored, but that's because none of them really talk like humans. Nothing really feels like it's an actual tangible conversation, because half the time the characters are only giving exposition. It's only an exposition machine. This movie really thinks you're stupid, so there's a lot of times where characters are just exactly spouting the exact thing you need to know, as if you're reading it off of a textbook almost. And that doesn't really help with the fact that there's too many characters. There's so many different plot threads introduced in this movie to kind of try to move the plot forward, but it doesn't feel like ever they're used to really enhance the story or anything. They're just used to explain certain things that the movie didn't really know how to smoothly explain. So whenever something is kind of confusing, a character will literally like walk into frame and start just explaining the exact thing going on. The movie genuinely thinks its audience is so dumb, and I hate movies that do that. I was just sitting there at a point, and I'm in the third act of this movie, and I was just like, they're telling me everything and not showing me. And it doesn't really help to me that the characters in this film are rather unlikable, and it's all unintentional, because there's, like I said, the dad's in a band, and at a point, something rather traumatic happens with one of the kids, and the dad still goes on tour. He still goes out there to work, and it feels like there's ways around that where he could have stayed behind and, been there for his child after this rather traumatic event happens. Don't want to give it away in case you want to watch this movie, but it was really just sudden, and it made the characters feel like they don't actually care. They felt like the dad was just neglectful, even though the movie kept telling me he wasn't. So it just felt like a giant excuse to write the husband out of the movie. And I don't really know why they did that. I mean, I guess it was for a sense of raising the stakes. Maybe it wanted to add, oh, now the stepmom's all alone with these kids, which I get that intent. It just didn't really fully land for me here. It doesn't help that the story itself is just all over the place. This movie tries to be like 3 different horror movies in one, but doesn't ever let any of them have enough time to shine. And what really bothers me the most is that the first half of this movie takes itself so seriously, and there's a lot of build-up, not a lot of payoff. And that's because it feels like the third act comes and hijacks the movie and makes it something entirely different. It feels like there is a whole nother movie operating in this, because it becomes suddenly this otherworldly, crazy, zany, almost funhouse horror vibe after trying to be a psychological thriller for the first half, and it just comes out of left field entirely. And it kind of reminded me of, for the best way to put it, if you ever watched the Cat in the Hat movie from the early 2000s, with Mike Myers, there's this scene where they go to a place that's kind of not of the world, it's kind of otherworldly. This reminded me of that, with all the CGI and stuff like that, but it just did not fit in the movie that was being made here. So the plot's not too cohesive, the characters aren't that likable. What about the horror? Is there at least some serviceable horror in this? Not really, not for me. At least it feels like this movie just spends so much time building stuff up, but there is no actual scare at a point. There's so many fake out jump scares in this, and that's such a lazy way to go, and this movie takes that route every chance it can get. You have a long scene of someone just kind of looking around a room and looking for stuff to find information, and then boo, someone jumps out and scares the mom, but it comes out of nowhere, and it's not really used as an effective scare. It's just more annoying scares. Like, okay, you made me jump. That's irritating, but can you actually pull me into a scene? Can I care about these people going through the horror? The most horrific scene for me was actually a scene I really wanted them to expand upon and maybe make it the whole movie, and that was this moment where they're filming this psychological session. A psychologist comes over to study one of the children and just make sure they're okay and see what's going on in their head. And you get a whole scene like that where the kid's talking to the camera, talking with the imaginary friend, so to speak, while the psychologist was watching, and there's a sense of building tension that I really appreciated, and I'm like, man, if the movie just sat in that so much longer, it would have really paid off some things, because I enjoyed those moments. I enjoyed the fact that, hey, maybe this stepmom who's dealing with her own trauma is going to help this little girl who's dealing with her trauma, and you kind of see how their psychological minds have gotten messed up from what has happened to them as kids. This movie wants to explore all that, and it throws those plot beats out there, but then doesn't really go into any of them. It just kind of fast forwards to an ending without really exploring the psychological nature of it. When we did have one cool scene that was like that, that also added some nice tension from a haunting moment. It was just, that scene alone was the scariest part of the movie, and I do think it's where the movie peaks. That part was kind of worth watching, but other than that, not a lot of scares really did it for me. There's not a lot of ingenuity with them. There's not a lot of fun moments that really kind of either, hey, are self-aware, or A, taking itself seriously enough to make me care. It tries to do both. It tries to have this sense of self-awareness at a point, but it does not totally fit the self-serious nature of the rest of the film. This movie is exposition city. All the characters they're rather unlikable. The movie itself thinks you're stupid. It wants to explain everything and tell you instead of showing you. Imaginary didn't really do it for me. It's something from Blumhouse that I think this movie just, I feel like, I don't know. My thoughts are scattered on this one, but not as scattered as the plot of this movie. So at the end of the day, Imaginary didn't really work for me. I hope you like it if you're a Blumhouse fan, if you're a horror movie fan. Nothing against you if you like it. Go check it out if you want. I personally did not work for me. Thought it was rather bland, and I just could have used a lot more for it. I want more from Blumhouse, and it just could have been better. What did you guys think of Imaginary? Did you enjoy it? What are your thoughts on it? Thank you for watching Scatterbrain Reviews. Please subscribe. Please like. Thank you so much again for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.